Welcome back to For the Elevate. This is our 6th episode, and we hope you are continuing to enjoy the journey we're taking you on. You may find some of our topics calling you to practice a little bit more grit than grace, but sometimes both are needed as you move towards that healthier living, leading, and learning. In this episode, Kathy, Leana, and I will chat about conflict, the bad, the ugly, and yes, even the good that comes with those situations. We'll also discuss how using a little kindness can help us have those very difficult conversations rather than avoid them. Now, this topic is definitely one that requires us to use both grit and grace, and we'll talk more about those two attributes in a later episode. Now, let's get to getting real and have Leana start us off.
We're back. Look at us. Hello. Good to see everyone again. We are back, Kathy, Bridget, and myself, Leana. We're going to have a continuing conversation. Last episode, we discussed, gee, ain't it awful? And how we hear that from so many different people in all kinds of circumstances now. And, maybe it's a matter of perspective. But with those folks who are doing the gee, ain't it awful, and you have to work with them or deal with them at home or whatever the situation may be, is there maybe potential to see some conflict around that whole attitude? Thoughts?
Well, yeah, I would think they kind of go together, and sometimes the gee ain't it awful is you're trying to manage yourself, not just other people.
Yeah.
Like, I got to get out of the gee ain't it awfuls. But yeah, I mean, every day we're encountering all these obstacles because the world has changed quite a bit, and obstacles can lead to conflict. In fact, they often do. And I don't know, I think we should just expect conflict and learn how to roll with it, manage it in a healthy way, rather than try to avoid it, quite frankly.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when your teams also see that you can manage conflict, you are experiencing the conflict, you're vulnerable, you're putting yourself out there, but you're committed to, working through those things, they mirror what they see. And that's really helpful.
So when you talk about learning how to manage it, some people seem to be naturally better at that than others. Some people in their well, maybe I'm wrong. No, but some people, I think, in their attempt to manage conflict can create more conflict.
Well, yeah, especially, I mean, you often see people mismanage it, that's for sure, which creates all kinds of issues, or not manage it at all, which creates another whole big set of issues. So I think there's skill involved in managing and responding to conflict and doing it in a constructive way. Skills that even start with things like listening. Crazy idea.
What was that?
Actually listening. Yeah. To what you're saying and to what you aren't saying, and drawing information from that. But then bringing that conflict out into the open, and that can be hard, but it's not going to go away when it's just smoldering under the surface. So you've got to find ways to bring that up and have some conversation about it.
Right. I think it's also paying attention to body language, right? So quite often, you can tell when someone is really upset, trying to put it off, they don't want to deal with it. I mean, how many times have we probably heard or managed individuals who said, I avoid conflict at all possible costs? Well, that's okay, but then that has caused conflict, or they end up being so upset that they can't really get to whatever the end game is, right? To get to the goal, the outcome, whatever it is, because they're still harboring a lot of angst and anxiety.
Yeah, and leaders in organizations, I've dealt with leaders who avoid conflict at all costs, and that, boy, does that. Well, I'll let you speak to that. What kind of message does that send to the team? What kind of nonsense can arise from that?
Well, actually today I was working with an organization that where the leaders, our CEO in particular, is risk avoidant. And so the entire organization is on hold while they're waiting for some difficult decisions to be made. And meanwhile, people are really stressed out about it, and they're not sure that their leaders are going to go in the right direction simply because they don't want to have to deal with the conflict. And that's a problem. I mean, we all do this little risk calculation in our mind about speaking up or not. And I'm only going to do it if I'm going to pay attention to my own self-interest here. So if I'm going to get whacked, I'm probably going to remain quiet about that. And we have this tendency to sort of overweigh the risks of a decision or a conversation in the short term and under value it in the long term. So we're kind of always trying to stay safe in the present moment, which can create all kinds of conflicts down the road.
That's it.
Right. Well, and it also doesn't allow for you to give your best, right? Give your best work, bring your best attitude, bring your best thinking, because you're so consumed with avoiding a situation or an individual. We always say practice certain things. Certainly don't practice conflict, not a good thing. But you can practice, dealing with that. And what you ultimately don't want is individuals who are so busy avoiding conflict that they end up leaving the organization. We have a lot of that going on right now, and we need to turn that tide.
Amen. We certainly do. Can you recommend some verbiage that someone could use? Maybe they're not comfortable with conflict, but they have a situation that they have to address. Is there a way to I hate the term soften the blow, because I think that's where we get ourselves in trouble and use verbiage that lessens the importance of the message, but some kind of verbiage in order to help people kind of figure out how to take that first step. I don't know. Apparently I need help.
Well, yeah. Well, part of it is you don't attack the person or their values or even their personality. Let's deal with the facts, the behaviors, and their impact on others. So pretend somebody's talking to you about a sensitive issue and how would you like that conversation to go, but don't ever attack their values or their personality, and try to stick with the facts. And it's always good to ask questions. And, for those of us who've gone through de-escalation training, I don't know if you've worked in an ER, you know what I'm talking about. But you ask more questions, you lower your tone and your volume. I mean, there's skills that you can learn that are really helpful.
Yeah, good. That's good advice.
And I think too, it's where we can also be a little bit kinder and gentler these days, right? So quite often conflict arises because people want to be so right all the time, right? And so we try to, with any situation that's causing conflict, if you can diffuse a lot with just starting out with something kind, just a kind word, let's just take a break. Let's think about this for a moment. There's just ways to diffuse a lot of situations like that.
That brings up, we'll talk a little bit more in a minute about the right versus kindness, because I think that's a really important conversation. But I would like your thoughts when you mentioned that about saying something positive. What are your thoughts on that negativity sandwich? The say something positive, then give the meat, and then say something positive. Any thoughts on that? Sounds kind of unappetizing to me, but I'm just
not on the diet.
Well, we've talked before on the whole feedback thing. If the only time you're really interacting with your team is when you have something negative to say, that's not a good strategy. If they're used to hearing positive and negative, it's going to be easier to address the situation. But I don't know. I think the Sanders thing is okay if you're sincere.
Yeah,
if there's really something that they are doing well, don't make it up. Right. But I think that there's lots of different aspects of a conflictual situation that you can find some positive and some not so positive. So yeah, I'm a fan of the sandwich.
All right.
Yeah.
Few chips on the side.
That's right. Well, and I think as long as it's constructive, right? And that's the only way you're going to learn, is really having that honesty there. We talked about that previously. I think that honesty in delivering the message is so important, but being constructive is really helpful. And again, that takes practice. It's not always so easy. Sometimes, it just comes out and you're like, wow, what did I just say? So take a few minutes, think about what you're going to say before someone is in front of you and you're having to deliver the positive, negative, positive, right? Think about how that's going to be perceived, and take a little bit of a kinder messaging there.
Yeah, I really love this kindness piece. I think that's so important. And we want to be the change that we want to see in the world. We can't control how the other person is going to react, but we certainly can how we do. Is kindness, I'm assuming, is the right approach if someone else is determined to be right.
Well,
unless it's your husband, that's another story.
No comment. Kindness is just simply interacting with someone human to human. We all have stuff. We all do dumb stuff. And if we can get to empathy and then showing our empathy through a kind comment or gesture, not a kind gesture. I'm not talking ugly gestures. Anyway.
Oh, middle finger.
No middle finger. Yeah. Yeah, no middle finger. But even I'm just always so impressed by the power of a gentle touch or a smile or just, can I get you a cup of coffee? And take a minute. It's okay.
That's great. Yeah, I love that. Rightness, that determination to be right. Do you find that connected in any way to perfectionism? Like to be wrong because of?
Yeah, I mean, many of us have that ingrained in us. I gotta be right. And it's really ugly. Perfectionism is really ugly. It's really putting your own personal needs before other people, and your own ideology in front of other people. And it's not a good way to live your life. So we often talk about it's way more important to pursue a positive future than it is to be perfect.
Well, and quite frankly, that's exhausting, pursuing perfection, right? And perfection is, it's so fleeting if it is achievable. And, you can be kind to yourself. There is no reason to be so perfect. And I have fallen victim to that. And I can tell you it's personally exhausting. So it's like time to move off of that. And going towards, as Kathy was saying, looking towards pursuing excellence or something like that, gosh, it changes your mindset immediately.
Well, I suggest, because I think that conversation can be extended, I think in our next episode, we should talk exhausting and ugly. What do you say? We'll dig in a little bit deeper to perfection.
Well, those sound pretty good to me. I like it.
I like them. What a perfect idea.
That's right.
Whoa.
Well, you can see we are definitely enjoying having these chats. And if you've been tuning into our episodes, we like to end our chats with a funny quote to think about when that day just gets a little bit too heavy. We lovingly refer to them as titter times. So here's one that we're especially fond of, given our topic of conflict. Here we go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to push all your buttons. I was just looking for the mute. Okay, well, the author for this one is unknown, but we've probably all wished for that mute button a time or two. Wouldn't you agree? So to complete this episode, please don't forget to leave us comments. Let us know what resonated with you. What has you thinking about doing things differently? And of course, Let us know what you would like to hear more about in future episodes. So until next time, keep moving towards a healthier you. Do it for the elevate.